Tonight, the CLP government questioned over its crime reforms as it marks 2 months in power. Good evening, I'm Isabella Tolhurst. This is ABC News Northern Territory. Pacific leaders and King Charles lay on the pressure over climate change at the Commonwealth Summit in Samoa. Also tonight, a deadly terrorist attack in Turkey prompts a swift response against Kurdish militants. And hopes for a new tourism boom as Netflix launches its outback drama, Territory. It's been 8 weeks since the country Liberals returned to government in the Northern Territory, ending 8 years of Labor rule. Crime has dominated the start of the parliamentary year, and it's had some in the community, including doctors, questioning if the reforms will work.
Elected on a ticket of law and order, the government today delivered a progress report from the top.
My government has achieved more for the Northern Territory in 8.5 weeks than your government did in 8 years.
The opposition labelling the Finocchiaro government's new crime reforms as back to the future.
Locking 10-year-old kids up is not delivering for the better.
Legislation, some argue, was rushed through without proper consultation.
We've got overflowing jails, and all these laws are going to do is put more people in prison.
Outside a national conference for doctors in Darwin, the government's decision to lower the age of criminal responsibility was questioned.
Executive functioning is not very advanced at the age of 10. They're still a child. They don't make decisions thinking about those long-term consequences.
The Territory's health minister was meant to attend a gala event for the conference this week. He pulled out and says it had nothing to do with any rumblings inside over the CLP's policies.
I get invited to a number of functions as the Minister for Health. I need to pick and choose which ones I can get to and fit in with my diary. In Alice Springs, where crime has made national headlines for years, some leaders are hoping the government's response will bring about change.
Service providers need to accept the umpire's decision and say, this is what's happening in the Territory, let's just work towards it. We've had these other things and they haven't worked.
Hope for change in a jurisdiction under pressure. Eleni Roussos, ABC News.
NT Police has been ordered to hand over its findings into the helicopter crash that killed Netflix star Chris Willow Wilson in 2022. It comes ahead of the trial of co-star Outback Wrangler Matt Wright, who has been charged over alleged events after the crash. Mr Wright appeared in the NT Supreme Court for a pre-trial hearing today alongside his wife. The court heard NT Police has been subpoenaed to hand over materials about the crash, as well as a huge amount of mobile phone material. The court also heard police will likely object to the material being accessed by Mr Wright's team. The case returns to court next month. Renegade Senator Lydia Thorpe has walked back her account of her parliamentary swearing-in day, saying her mispronunciation of the Oath of Allegiance was in fact a mistake. She told the ABC yesterday she swore allegiance to the Queen's heirs, not her heirs, sparking calls from the coalition to have her suspended. But Senator Thorpe says she's not going anywhere. Political reporter Isabella reports.
3 days on from this outburst before the King, Lydia Thorpe remains in the spotlight.
The whole world is talking about it and my people are happy.
Critics say Monday's protest broke her oath of allegiance to the monarch, an oath the Victorian Independent pointed out yesterday she actually fudged.
Her heirs and successors according to law. It wasn't her heirs, it was her heirs that I was giving my allegiance to, and now that, they're no longer here, I don't know where that stands.
The opposition is seeking legal advice on whether that mispronunciation could be grounds for dismissal.
What we see now is a circumstance that creates a doubt over her eligibility and validity to have taken up her seat in the Senate.
By mid-morning, Senator Thorpe's explanation had changed.
My English grammar isn't as good as others, and I spoke what I read. so I misspoke. Well, it starts with a H, so...
Lydia Thorpe has found a smattering of support from the Senate.
It's her right as an Indigenous woman and as an Australian citizen and as a senator to raise these issues. I don't have a problem with it at all.
Okay.
In fact, I found her words deeply moving.
She says she's speaking for those outside the halls of power.
All Aboriginal people that I've bumped into around the street have all pulled me up to say, "Oh, Michael, did you see that woman on their TV? She's standing up for us."
Constitutional experts believe because the senator signed the oath, she did swear in correctly. Still, the Senate could vote on a censure motion, a symbolic condemnation with no legal consequences.
And we'll work with people across the chamber about what the appropriate response is.
I'm an independent. No one can kick me out of there.
Defiance until the end. Isabel Rowe, ABC News, Canberra.
Pacific countries are ramping up pressure on Australia over climate change as Anthony Albanese lands in Samoa to join a large meeting of Commonwealth leaders. King Charles has also used his first day in the country to highlight the existential threat fossil fuels pose, not just to the Pacific, but to the world. Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts is in Samoa for the meeting.
The Pacific's beauty is fragile and its future uncertain.
We will not sit quietly and allow others to determine our fate.
As sea levels rise, Pacific leaders today launching a new report which finds 3 wealthy countries, Australia, Canada and the UK, have been responsible for more than 60% of emissions generated by new coal and gas projects in the Commonwealth since 1990. Tuvalu's Prime Minister Feleti Teo has signed a landmark pact with Canberra, but says if the federal government doesn't phase out fossil fuel exports, the future looks grim.
To put it plainly, it is a death sentence, not phrases that I use lightly.
All of us have to respond on climate, all major economies in particular.
King Charles also keen to highlight dire climate threats, visiting mangroves which guard against coastal erosion, and being granted the honour of a chiefly title. Anthony Albanese landed this afternoon in Samoa in driving rain, another reminder of how quickly the weather can shift here and how vulnerable the region is to even small climate shifts. He could face some hard questions on fossil fuels and on climate finance. But the Prime Minister will also want to remind Australians of the progress the government's made, building deeper security and strategic links with the region. Like a new Pacific Police support group encouraged by Australia with an eye on China. Officers from across the region now hitting Samoa's streets for its first ever deployment, providing security for Chogam. But security threats take many shapes. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News, Apia.
5 people have been killed and at least 22 injured in a terror attack in Turkey. 1 male and 1 female terrorist armed with rifles and explosives opened fire at an aerospace company. Turkey was fast to retaliate, launching more than 30 airstrikes against Kurdish militant targets.
2 gun-wielding assailants stalked towards their target, the headquarters of one of Turkey's most important defence and aviation companies. First gunfire, then an explosion. Surveillance cameras capture a gunman up close when he enters the facility near Ankara. Special forces deploy, then communications are silenced.
I called my brother who was inside and said, "What happened?" He said, "A bomb had exploded." Then the phones shut off.
4 of the dead were employees of the aerospace company. 1, mechanical engineer Zahida Güçlü, arrived at the entrance at the same time as the attackers. She was collecting a bunch of flowers sent by her husband. The 5th was the taxi driver who drove the pair to the location. Turkey's defence minister suggested the Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as the PKK, a listed terrorist group in Australia, was behind the attack. This complex houses Turkish Aerospace Industries, a major manufacturer of both civilian and military aircraft, and in particular drones. Those drones have been used extensively in Turkey's fight against Kurdish militants. The attack came just one day after a far-right ally of Turkish President Erdogan called for the imprisoned leader of the PKK to be released if he renounced violence and disbanded the organisation. The Turkish president was in Russia, attending a summit with Vladimir Putin.
I would like to express my condolences.
I condemn this heinous attack.
Our prayers are with all of those affected and their families, and of course also the people of Turkey at this very difficult time.
In response, Turkey launched more than 30 airstrikes against Kurdish militants in Iraq and Syria. Eric Twarchek, ABC News, Istanbul.
Israel has continued to attack southern Beirut, destroying residential buildings in a wave of violent strikes. It comes as Israeli authorities have arrested more than a dozen people on charges of carrying out missions for Iran.
Beirut's night sky lit up as Israeli strikes pound the capital. One hitting the empty office of pro-Iranian broadcaster Al Mayadeen. Hours earlier, the Israeli military issued evacuation warnings for the ancient port city of Tyre. Popular with tourists, the vibrant metropolis had largely been spared until now. Israel hitting buildings close to heritage sites, including the UNESCO-listed Roman Hippodrome.
It was the first time we heard these sounds. It was terrible, really terrible.
The Israeli military said it was targeting Hezbollah assets in the area, but Tyre is home to many civilians with no ties to the Iranian-backed terrorist group.
We took the children, grabbed what we could and fled. Suddenly, while we were sitting by the sea, we heard that our house had been destroyed.
Hezbollah firing more rockets at Israel, some as far south as Tel Aviv. All happening as the US Secretary of State was in Israel trying to negotiate ceasefires with Hezbollah and Hamas in Gaza.
We're working to get clear understandings for Gaza's governance, for its security, for its reconstruction, and what the international community can do to help.
In Khan Yunis, Gazans are desperately searching for something to eat.
Sometimes we manage to get a pack of bread, but other times we leave empty-handed. Sometimes we and the children manage to eat, and sometimes we don't.
And as the fighting continues on two fronts, Israel continues to plan its retaliatory attack against Iran after a barrage of missiles earlier this month. And Israeli authorities have arrested more than a dozen people in the last fortnight accused of spying for Iran. Growing unease as US efforts to stem the violence falter. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Jerusalem.
At least 24 people are now confirmed dead after a tropical storm hit the northeastern Philippines earlier today. Widespread flooding and landslides swept away cars and prompted authorities to scramble for motorboats to rescue trapped villagers. Storm Trami brought winds of up to 160 kilometres an hour when it made landfall just after midnight local time. Authorities expect the death toll to rise as they attempt to reach villages that have been isolated by fallen debris. Donald Trump's longest-serving chief of staff says he believes the Republican presidential nominee meets the definition of a fascist. Retired Marine General John Kelly worked in Donald Trump's White House between 2017 and 2019. He's told the New York Times that while in office, the former president had praised Hitler for doing some good things and prefers the dictator approach to government. The Trump campaign called the claims fabricated, but Vice President and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris has seized on the reporting.
Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable. And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails against his propensities and his actions.
The woman at the centre of a mass rape trial in France has told the court she's completely destroyed, but hopes she can give courage to others by speaking out. Giselle Pellicot has been praised for allowing the trial to be held in public, the case energising a push to change consent laws in France.
Leaving court to applause and admiration. Supporters have been here every day of this gruelling trial to cheer on their new feminist hero. Giselle Pellicot came face to face with her ex-husband Dominique, who admitted to drugging her in their family home. So he and 50 strangers he recruited online could allegedly rape her while she was unconscious over the course of a decade. Most of the accused men have denied rape, saying they thought they were playing a part in the couple's game. On the stand, Ms Pellicot spoke directly to her ex-husband, but refused to look at him. "How could you have betrayed me to this point? How could you have brought these strangers into my bedroom? I'm a woman who is totally destroyed, and I don't know how I can pick myself up from this." Ms Pellicot chose to have the trial held in an open court, waiving her right to anonymity. She says she was motivated by a desire to lift the shame felt by rape victims and hopes the public trial will help change society. This is a case which has shaken and horrified the world and prompted deep soul-searching in France. Whether the country should change its rape law to include consent has been a hotly contested issue, and now a review has been launched into the legislation.
We want to reverse the paradigm and say that actually there is no consent unless the person has clearly expressed it in a free and conscious manner.
Thousands of protesters have taken to streets across France in recent weeks in solidarity with Giselle Pellicot and a growing push for change. The trial has reached its halfway point and is expected to continue until December. Bridget Rollison, ABC News.
Coming up on 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson, less than 2 weeks out from the US election, are black voters abandoning the Democratic Party?
I will be voting for Donald Trump.
Why?
Why? I believe that he would be a much better candidate.
Donald Trump has a certain kind of appeal to male voters in general, including male African-American voters.
Dude attacked his own country. He's finna be the president again. Come on, man.
The NT Outback is going global tonight with the new Netflix neo-Western drama Territory rolling out across the world. Screen Territory estimates the production injected nearly $7 million into the local economy. And with scores of iconic top-end locations featured, there are hopes the series will spur a Crocodile Dundee-style tourism boom.
Marion Station, the world's largest cattle station.
From the top end, Netflix's new big hit. The red carpet rolling out in Palmerston at last night's premiere.
Really looking forward to a good drama based in the NT and places that we recognise.
It's exciting to know that the whole world's going to see what it's like being up in the Territory.
It'll be really exciting. I just can't wait to watch it.
Filmed at Tipperary Station, the series follows a succession-style battle over the fictional Marianne Station, with desert gangsters, billionaire miners, cattle barons and Indigenous elders.
There's still blackfella country.
All fighting to control the world's largest cattle station.
Who owns this place? The Lawsons!
We love doing it. We love being here. The people were fantastic. It changed everyone because it's just such a special place to go and work in.
The series launches tonight into 190 countries.
My hope is that people fall in love with the show, fall in love with the characters, fall in love with the incredible acting, and they jump on a plane and come and check out the NT.
It's not just tourism which could benefit. Almost 300 Territorians worked on the show, either behind the scenes or on screen, giving those in the local film industry invaluable experience.
The great thing about Screen Territory bringing these projects here is we're hungry for the work, but also the experience that gives us opportunities that we thought we'd never get.
Giving the Territory another shot at global fame. Jack Hislop, ABC News.
Australia's Big Four banks are using artificial intelligence to help decide home loan approvals. Staff in call centres are also being assisted by AI, sparking fears that jobs could be cut. With a lack of specific regulation, there are also concerns about the risks of using this technology.
At ANZ's new AI centre, workers are being taught how artificial intelligence can help them process loan applications.
So whenever you apply for a loan, we have to pick up all sorts of information such as pay slips, proof of employment, complex loan contracts. AI can now allow us to actually take information from documents, cutting the amount of time it takes from hours and hours down to sometimes mere seconds.
AI also acts as an over-the-shoulder assistant for about 1,200 call centre staff.
People have used this technology to very quickly summarise everything about what the bank has on file for the customer.
Unions are worried about job losses and they want banks to explain to staff how it will change their work.
We don't want to see a situation where finance workers or consumers in Australia are simply having AI foisted upon them and they are having to deal with whatever the banks decide is a good idea.
Now, the danger, particularly for financial institutions or any institution that is governed by certain codes of behaviour, is that those AIs will make mistakes.
The rapid pace at which AI is advancing means the technology is moving faster than the regulation. The European Union has already introduced some laws to regulate artificial intelligence, a model Australia could consider. ANZ says the risks are being carefully weighed up.
I don't think that's likely to happen in the next 5 to 10 years of having a home loan completely decided by a machine. I think it's very likely, though, that the way we're going to buy homes will be fundamentally different.
Differences customers will soon see as they interact with Australia's biggest lenders. Nasim Khadem, ABC News.
Time now to take a look at finance. Here's Alan Kohler.
Earlier this week, it emerged that WiseTech founder and CEO, billionaire Richard White, had bought expensive houses for women he was having affairs with and paying them big salaries. Today, a leaked letter by a former director accused him of intimidation and bullying. It was the last straw. The share price fell another 6.5%, taking the total loss of value to more than $8 billion in a week. And tonight, Richard White resigned, effective immediately. The market as a whole eased today with falls by miners, gains by banks. And in banking news, there is a rare split between them. It's about that loan buffer the bank regulator increased from 2.5% to 3% during the pandemic. It means, of course, that you can only get the loan if you can afford repayments at a 3% higher rate than you're actually paying. So we thought the banks all wanted it cut back to 2.5% as it was, so they can lend some more. But no, NAB and ANZ do. So does the Australian Bankers Association, but today it emerged that Westpac and Commonwealth Bank want it kept at 3% because they're worried about delinquency. Also, they're doing fine, thanks. Speaking of banks, CBA released some analysis of its customer data today showing the impact of the tax cuts, which was quite big in the last quarter. But guess what? Spending did not rise at all. And the second guess what is that the 20% with the lowest incomes are the only ones reducing their spending. In other words, the poorest families are doing all the work of slowing the economy and reducing inflation. The US market fell last night, so did Hong Kong today, while Tokyo rose. Commodities mostly fell, gold, iron ore and oil all down by more than 1%, and the Aussie dollar continued to drift against the strong US dollar. And that's finance.
A raft of sporting heroes have been unveiled as the latest inductees into the Australian Sports Hall of Fame. The feats of some of our greatest sports people have been celebrated at a ceremony today in Melbourne.
Olympic hurdles champion Sally Pearson is still coming to terms with her achievements.
It's quite surreal. All of a sudden you have this phone call saying, oh, we're going to induct you into the Sporting Hall of Fame. Like, really? What? Now?
One of 8 new inductees into Sport Australia's Hall of Fame, the 2012 London gold medalist counts herself lucky.
It's just who is the best athlete on the day, and if you can manage to be able to be that person, then there's no better feeling.
3-time surfing world champion Mick Fanning's beach days now look a little different in retirement.
The days that I get to take my kids out is so much more humbling, but also so much more rewarding than what I ever did when I hear them screaming and having so much fun. Best thing in the world.
Karen Murphy is the first female bowls player to receive the honour after news earlier this week the sport made the cut for the Commonwealth Games.
It's been a great week. Bowls in the Commonwealth Games means everything to our athletes and everyone who's gone before us.
Not so lucky was hockey. Former Kookaburras captain, now Hall of Famer Mark Knowles, not giving up hope of the sport's return to the Games.
The optimist in me would say, let's hope this is a reduced Games and we see back to normality in the future, but no one knows what the future at the moment looks like for the Com Games.
This latest round of inductees join the likes of Dawn Fraser, Richie Benaud and Yvonne Goolagong-Cawley as icons of this sport. Their inclusion in the Hall of Fame now cementing the legacy they've already left. 2 Hall of Fame members will be elevated to legend status on November 18. Erin Marsicovetere, ABC News.
The AFLW's Indigenous round kicks off tonight in Cairns with a matchup between Hawthorn and Narm. The second-placed Hawks are aiming for their first grand final, but midfielder Mattia Breed is already making history. She's just the 3rd Tiwi Islander woman to play in the league, despite its enormous popularity in the region.
When Mattia Breed steps into the Hawks Museum at Waverley Park, she's able to take in the achievements of Hawthorn's past Indigenous heroes. But connection to her own heritage has proved elusive.
My nana was part of the stolen generation and then raised in a Catholic mission, wasn't taught any of her culture or traditions or anything like that.
Breed grew up in Darwin, the daughter of 2 police officers. But after her grandmother died, Mum Rosanna took a job on the Tiwi Islands to reconnect with culture.
Indigenous cultures are passed down so heavily through oral history and traditions. That's why Mum made it such a mission to learn as much as she could and pass that down, even though it wasn't organic.
It's one reason Breed calls her mum, who played the game into her 50s, her hero.
To have someone that's so heavily in your corner to support you in every element is just, I might get a little bit teary.
Aussie Rules dominates the Tiwi Islands, with 900 men and women playing the game out of a population of just 2,500, with the Women's League fielding an impressive 7 teams alone. But the barriers to making it to the top, explored in the recent documentary Like My Brother, remain even today.
When you see that sort of talent, you just think if someone was there to nurture and support you and help you get to the next level, the possibilities are endless.
In the meantime, Breed's extensive Tiwi family will be cheering her on against the Demons. Kate O'Halloran, ABC News.
Time for a check of the weather, starting with this viewer photo sent in by Kim Hanna at the Goldfields. Some isolated afternoon showers in the top end, storms in the Gregory district and patchy cloud persisting in the southwest today. It was 35 in Darwin today, 39 in Jabiru and 35 degrees on the Tiwi Islands. Zooming out, Katherine reached a high of 40, Nhulunbuy hit 33. Tennant Creek was 39 and Alice Springs topped at 33 degrees. On the satellite, the remnants of a cloud band linger over southwest NT and WA's interior. The trough brought afternoon storms to Queensland and northeast New South Wales. A high in South Australia is directing gustily southeasterlies through central Australia, while a trough of low pressure curves across northern parts of the country. Around the country tomorrow, Brisbane with storms and a top of 30, a possible shower in Sydney, 21 degrees. Canberra, partly cloudy, 19. Melbourne with a possible morning shower, 16. Raining in Hobart, a top of 13. Partly cloudy skies in Adelaide, 21 degrees. And Perth, mostly sunny, 25 the high. Back in the Territory, it's sunny in the centre, 33 in Alice Springs, some gusty winds for Tennant Creek, 37 degrees there. Further north, 39 degrees in Katherine, 40 in Borroloola and 33 for Nhulunbuy. And scattered showers and storms in the west, Darwin 35, Jabiru 38 and Batchelor 36 degrees. There are bushfire warnings in place for the majority of the Territory, with extreme warnings for the Barkly North District due to the hot, dry weather and increased winds. The high tide tomorrow will be just after 10 a.m. and winds will reach up to 10 knots off Darwin. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:15 and set at about 6:45. And taking a look at the weekend and beyond, the chance of showers and storms continue in Darwin, increasing slightly from Sunday, while in Alice Springs, temperatures are warming up a little as we head into the weekend, while a trough will bring some cloud coverage on Sunday. And that's all for ABC News this evening. Stay with us now. Sarah Ferguson is up next with 7:30. Good night.